What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the whole grown up. Very, very excited to have everyone join us. And we have another very special guest, personal friend of mine. And I'll try not to let that get in the way, but I'm excited to have Mr. Michael Chambers Jr., attorney at law out of Greater Hartford. They are actually literally in Hartford, Connecticut. And as you know, with the whole grown up, or maybe you don't know and you're new to the channel or the website, but here at the whole grown up, I have real life, dare I say, grown up conversations about life, business, empowerment, and so much more. And, all of my guests are inspiring leaders and professionals with, also impactful human stories as well, too. So my hope that you as a listener and a viewer of this show will get something, at least one thing impactful out of this to make your lives exponentially better. So I am going to bring Mr. Chambers on. But before I do that, I think one of the coolest things about, I'm going to slip every once in a while and say Mickey. We call him Mickey. But one of the coolest things about Mick is he's really adopted technology and social media. And he delivers and communicates to people in a really cool and fun sort of way. So I want to share a little bit about a little sample of that just by going to his Facebook page and letting you guys peep one of his videos real quick before we get him on.
Attorney Mike Chambers Jr. here, just getting ready to start my day. And today is December 21st, which is the winter solstice, but also I was told that today black people might have special powers. You see, I guess the way that the planets are aligning with Saturn and something else, it will have effect on people with melanin in their skin. So, that's the rumor. Now, I'm not telling you that you should believe everything you hear on the internet, and I typically don't, but just in case.
I gotta do one more.
You just tell me, what can I do for you?
It's a very personal, very important thing. Hell, it's a family motto.
Are you ready, Jerry?
I'm ready.
Just want to make sure you're ready, brother.
Here it is. Show me the money.
Spot 4 o'clock. I took a long over frost, but still got a knock.
Money!
So clearly a unique way of going about doing things, using humor. And without further ado, I'm going to bring my man, Mr. Michael Chambers, on the line. Mick, what's going on, good sir?
What an introduction! I hope I can live up to my hype right there that you've given me. But thank you so much for having me.
Yo, don't let us down, man. And it's not even about me. Don't let the people down. Do you know what I'm saying? This is your brand, your reputation. It's not about me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. It was a pleasure to be here. And man, we've been talking about having a conversation like this for quite some time, and I'm glad we finally done it.
Yes, yeah. So we're gonna do it, man. And I think I think it would have been easy for me to get on here and just ask you a bunch of questions about what it's like to be an attorney. And I think I do want to discuss some of that. And we've talked about this. I've been dying to have this conversation with you as well. But what I really want to get at, Mick, is what makes you tick? What drives you? What are some of the things that you think about? So, we're going to keep this conversational, but, feel free to expound on anything you want and take this in any direction that you want, because you've got just an interesting perspective on life and the world. And I want people to really get a sense of that from you. But let's start here. So let's talk about, I know a lot about your background, but your family, came over here from Jamaica. I know education has been a big part of your life, as it has been with mine, but just help people understand that don't really know you, about your upbringing and maybe some of the things that you've taken or always reflect back about, your childhood years and the way you were raised. But, anything you want to share, Mick, before we move on.
Yeah, man. So, education has always been really important to my family and to my life. It's interesting. My mother is the youngest of 8. My father is the oldest of 6. Of my father's 6 brothers, 5 of them had engineering degrees. The one of them, the baby, used to watch his sister in college and thought that engineering was too hard, so he decided to be a biology major and is a doctor now. So, education has always been something we drive through. My father's said to me one time, he said, the only time me and you would have a fist fight is if I ever hit a woman or if I dropped out of college. So that's something that's always stuck with me from a very young age. I tell people my early relationship with my father was based on fear. And much later on, me and my dad now are the best of friends. And for a long time, I used to walk into buildings and I was Mike's son. And
Mm.
now the baton is being passed off now because when he walks into buildings now, he's now become Mike's dad.
Ooh.
So I've always said that I'm borrowing my name. Um, I'm canning it off to my daughter and hopefully to any future children. So I'm trying to take care of it. So first and foremost, the pillar I think in my family has been education. I saw my mom go back to school for her master's degree
Mm.
with two kids working a full-time job. She had her undergrad degree but wanted to go back for a master's. So I was, 10, 11 years old and watching her go back to school and, the struggles of that because there was no online education back then. You had to go to class every night and to come home and make dinner and then go to school. My dad's not much of a cook. He married very well, so his wife would come home and make dinner, and then go off to do school. So, I've always seen education as being really important, and also education is something no one can ever take from you, right? Once you
Yeah.
get that diploma, once you put it on the wall, they can't take that from you. So, education is that for it, and then you can't really buy that. Although there were some scandals earlier this year where people were trying to buy. We've seen buying educations, but
Hmm.
you can't really buy an education and a pedigree. From very early, my parents sent me to Montessori schools, right? They sent me to Catholic schools to St. Timothy's. I was fortunate. I went to the Loomis Chaffee School. I left from Loomis Chaffee. I went to Trinity College. I left from Trinity College. I went to Quinnipiac Law School. So I've never stepped a day in a public school,
Mm.
and much of that was because my parents felt like my education was an investment, and they just decided, the Bible says, where you place your treasures is where your heart is, and they placed their treasures instead of bigger house and newer cars into making sure my sister and I attended some of the best schools in the country. So I'm very fortunate in that sense.
And I'm actually nervous to ask you a closed-ended question, but I'm going to ask it of you anyway. But I want you to be a little bit more thoughtful about your response and kind of go a little bit deeper. Here's my question: were you lucky?
I will say grace, right?
Mm.
We're all covered in God's grace, and I've had opportunities, and I made the best of it. For example, lucky grace. When I was in eighth grade, I was always played soccer in Bloomfield,
Mm.
and it just so happened the year that I turned my age group, there wasn't a team in Bloomfield, so I ended up having to play for Windsor. Blasphemy, I know, Bloomfield kid playing soccer for
It's
Windsor,
okay,
right?
man. It's all right.
So I ended up playing soccer in Windsor, and Bob Southall saw me playing. I must have scored like 40 goals that year. And he said to you, do you ever think about going to a school like Loomis? And the natural progression would have just been me go to Northwest Catholic. All my friends went to St.
Sure.
Timothy's. And I said, I never thought about it. And then my mom started talking to it, and there was these tests called the SSATs or the PSATs, wherever they
Correct.
call it.
PSA.
And you know, I smoked them, right? I scored in the 98th percentile across the board in the country. So that was a big deal for, to have scores that high, to have,
Mm.
really good scores in grades in middle school, and be athletically gifted. So that was a big deal. So that opened the doors for, Loomis Chaffee, Westminster, schools like that, and ended up going to Loomis. And so was that luck? It was luck to put me to have that chance conversation, but at that point it was hard work and my ability in the classroom that it was able to get me into Loomis Chaffee in terms of my test scoring and academic ability. So I think it's some people say luck, but I often say as I get older and I'm seeing certain things, I defer to Mike Senior and say it's grace.
Yeah, I love that answer, man. And you and I know each other well, and for the viewers, I mean, it's almost like I'm kind of asking questions of myself in some ways, which is challenging. But I get asked that question a lot of myself, and I agree with you, man. Have we been put in fortunate situations? Yes. But I think there's a lot of people that have been blessed and graced with fortunate situations and have fumbled the ball, so to speak, right? And I think the one thing, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I think the one thing I always rely on is once I'm there, I'm gonna make the most out of it, and I'm gonna squeeze that orange and get every bit of juice as I can get out of the opportunity that's been presented to me, and I'm gonna be prepared to take it on. Is that similar to what you're saying? Is there anything in that you would expand on or change or?
Well, let me take a step back and tell the audience who knows you but doesn't know you. Michael Jordan is one of the smartest people I know, right? You are clearly, and a lot of people, I know a lot of smart people, but people don't execute, right?
Hmm.
There's like there was a discussion the other day is the guy that has the $50 million idea, is he's a smart one or the guy that can actually execute it, right?
Hmm.
And I love being associated with anything with you because a lot of times in life I've got a lot of great ideas, but
Thank you.
my follow through is not nearly as efficient and accuracy. You're like the guy that creates, you're like the car company that does the prototype, and the prototype actually looks like the final product. Like, how many great prototypes of cars do we see look nothing like the
Yeah.
prototype? So first and foremost,
Thank you, man. I
I
appreciate
love
that. But
being
this is about you.
associated with the Michael. No, no, but I want to say I
Thank
like
you.
being associated with the Michael Jordan brand. First of all,
All right, I'll
um,
drink to
I,
that. Cheers.
I, I mean, I forgot the original question because I took a step back.
It was
Um,
about just sort of taking advantage of opportunities as they're presented. Is that a different way of talking through the idea of grace, right? Because
so
I guess I'm not quite sure if I think what you're saying is similar to my take, which is taking advantage of any opportunity that's given to me, and maybe the opportunity was luck, but when I was there, I squeezed the juice out of it, right? Is what I was saying.
correct. Well, we've been blessed to put it right. So let's start with Loomis, right? So Loomis has I think for both of us really changed the trajectory in life, right? It's not that we couldn't get to where we are. Don't get me wrong, right? We have great families. We had great upbringings. We both have a good moral code, but I think from that point, and I think earlier for me, I'll start from Montessori because I can
Mm.
remember the way my mind was trained.
I went to
But
Gentle Ways at St. Justin. I went to Catholic school my whole life, like you. Bob Saltall
absolutely,
saw me play basketball because he invited my team to work out at Loomis so they could have exposure to the travel team, and saw me play all season, right? And I ended up playing ball at Loomis. So,
absolutely.
I didn't want to turn the tide, but like I don't think I've ever realized how much our paths were so similar, even coming up as kids. And you were talking about
100%.
Montessori.
100%. And in that sense that, I have that discussion with people all the time. Like right now, we're looking at stuff. Where my daughter's going to school. She's going to be 3 years old. So I've said we've been looking into Montessori schools, and people are like, well, you live in a great town. There's a great system, and it's like, well, for me, it's like I don't ever want to give my kids less than what I had.
Mm,
And if my parents felt like that was the right decision for me, and then,
mm,
then I'd like to give them that too.
mm,
The other decision is, and I tell people, I'm like, well, there's a reason why the soccer moms drive around in big SUVs. And one of the reasons is space, but the other reason is safety, right? You can
mm,
get from point A to point B in a nice Toyota Corolla, but you feel that that big car provides your family with the most safety.
mm.
So if you're willing to spend more on a car to get you from point A to point B safely, why wouldn't you feel that way about other aspects of your life, whether it be education, whether it be health insurance, whether it be, anything of that? If you can do something that if you bought a bulletproof vest,
Mm.
if you had the 98% for effective and the 75 percentile, you're going to buy the 98. So Loomis, 99% of the kids go to college. Why wouldn't I at least try to send my children to the school with the 99%? Not that you couldn't go to Yale from
Sure.
Bloomfield or Windsor. It happens all the time. But I'm going to play the odds and play the percentages because, and again, it's all an investment in life, and someone that deals in investments, it's about investing in yourself and your children.
And I think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I can imagine some of the grace you talk about has to do with the fact, or let me backtrack and say, my question about luck, really wasn't necessarily about you or me, but, I have these conversations, like I have cousins that grew up in New York City, for example, and one of them, we have these conversations about, my situation maybe compared to theirs. And they're, brilliant humans, right? But you touched on it earlier, like, would you be where you're at now without the commitment to education your parents had, the investments that they had? And then conversely, and I don't mean to overload and load you up with questions because you kind of touched on it already, but what I want to get at is, what about the people who aren't graced to go to a prep school or fortunate enough? What kind of advice would you give a young man who's on your path? And I'm going to get to your career, and we're not going to take 2 hours here, although we could. But what would you say to a young Michael Chambers, or fill in the blank for a name, that has great parents and they want to provide the best but may not have the means? What type of advice would you give that family, that young man today?
So I would say, this technology is a gift and a curse, right? I believe as much information is available at your fingertips, we've become disconnected more so than ever, right? So we're more connected than ever, but we're more disconnected than ever. And I'm not even talking just COVID, right? Friendships have become extremely lazy, right? You see your friend on Facebook, they're doing okay, so you don't pick the phone up, you don't text. Same thing with the resources, man. I would, as a parent, as a student, get out there and read and look into as many opportunities as possible. Look for internships, look for mentorships. Sometimes you just don't know. You just got to expose yourself, man. It's a really, really big world. And when we were that age, we didn't have as many of those opportunities to see it from afar and know it was out there, right? Like, I didn't know Loomis was out there, but for a chance opportunity.
Right.
Whereas these kids, are watching an episode of Power, and they're seeing, this kid going to Choate, which is another elite school. And for the first time, I heard one of my nieces and nephews say, "What's the Choate school?" I'm like, "Oh, I can tell you about
Yeah,
that."
let me tell you about Choate.
So you got to go out there and try to expose yourself and ask as many questions, and put yourself into some circles and groups that you're not necessarily comfortable in. And it's not because it's a bad circle, but it's just a lack of familiarity. It's a very simple. It's the other golden rule, and you try not to talk about it, but it's true, which is, he who has the gold makes the rules. So you gotta go find the people who are making the rules, right? You've gotta find those people, and you've gotta learn how they play the game. And that's, if someone told you right now that there's a game called, super up down ball, and you can make $1 million if you play it, you're gonna ask, well, how do you play? Right? Like
No
anything
doubt.
else in life. Right. And then the other thing is that other thing we've got to understand is that not everybody has to go to college to be successful. Right. My definition of success may be different from someone else's definition of success and someone else's definition of success. College is not necessarily for everyone, and you can be extremely successful. You can be a good person. You can live a good life. If you want to make lots of money, you can make lots of money, and you don't necessarily have to go to college. So you got to be able to kind of figure out, maybe some other paths, and figure out what works best for you. But as long as you have a drive, you have a focus, you try to get a little bit better every day, you're going to be all right. But it does take some grace and luck, right? I come back to, there was nothing smart or intelligent or great about me at age 24 years old when I'm in downtown Bloomfield and I fell asleep at a stoplight after a long night of hanging out with my friends. I woke up 3 minutes later. Grace of God that no one pulled me over. Grace of God I didn't take my foot off the brake. So I don't judge people, right? Because that was not smart. That was grace, right? So when you've had a couple experiences like that, you can kind of step back and say, all right, well, I'm not that great. You know what I mean? Something else stepped in for me.
Yes.
Maybe it was grandma's prayers at that point, and like grace, man, the grace of God, bro, really and truly.
I'm with that, man, and I feel like I've had similar experiences. But again, let's get back to you, Loomis Chafee. You went to Trinity,
Yes, sir.
and then you went to Quinnipiac for law school.
Yes, sir.
You had a choice, Mick. You could have, tried to go to a local law firm or get into politics, maybe, but you opted for private practice, and I think just going back to your website and reading about me. By the way, your site looks great, and
Thanks, man.
congratulations on everything you've been doing with the business. But you had a choice to make. Talk about the choice you had, the choice you took, and maybe even a little bit about the betting on yourself, because I feel like
So,
that's what you did. If I'm wrong, certainly correct me. But talk me through what that was like for you.
well, it's necessity is the mother of invention, right? So first and foremost, shout out to Peralta Design that did a great job on my website. If nothing else, my logo, I love my logo. My frat brother, Ramon Peralta, great company out of Southern Connecticut. When I came out of law school, I applied to jobs. I applied to work at the AG's office. I interviewed. I was waitlisted. I applied to some small law firms. Um, and when I was not working anywhere, I used to literally just go and sit in courtrooms. I used to go and sit in courtrooms and I'd watch and I'd watch and I'd watch and I'd watch and I'd just sit there. And after a while, I was like, not to say that this isn't that hard, but I didn't necessarily think that it was as hard as people made it seem out. So I'm saying I'm 25 and a half years old. I don't have any children. I had a super small bill because my dad had been gracious enough and had bought a condo, and all I was doing was paying the condo fees at the time. And I said, if I was going to go on my own, this was the time to go on my own. And I sat in my office, and there was many long days and nights where the phones didn't ring much. I became an excellent online poker player because I had a lot of time on my hands sitting in the office, waiting to the phone to ring. And I just grinded. And again, grace and luck. One day I happened to be bonding out, matter of fact, bonding out a friend of mine who had gotten in trouble after a long night and met a gentleman who was a bondsman. And we just clicked and hit it off. And he just started sending me case after case after case after case. And I was in Manchester court every day. And then I kind of had the real estate thing going. So I was doing closings. And I just grinded. And I just remember, again, my father telling me, he always wanted me to go on my own. He always was like, you'll never become wealthy working for someone else. Um, and I took that from my dad. He worked for corporate America. He was a test engineer for Hamilton Standard and Pratt Whitney, those type of companies working, on commercial engines, right? Big deal. And I remember the day he got laid off in corporate America. And I know that was one of the worst feelings in his life. And he said to me after that, thankfully he had some real estate and he used to, buy one or two multifamilies. And it turned out he had, dozens at some point, 10, 20, 30 at a time. And I learned that from him that, a dollar earned working for yourself was a lot better. And they couldn't take that away from him. So that was really what pushed me into private practice. No one was hiring me at the time. I was sitting around working for a couple attorneys.
Mm.
I started showing up at my dad's lawyer's office, working on some stuff for my dad. My dad basically became a squatter, started using their copiers, making phone calls. Shout out to Kevin Carroll and Ron Johnson. At one point, a small office opened up. I started renting space in there, and I've been grinding and blessed ever since. That I've always been able to grow a little bit every year. If it's $500 more, every year I've been able to grow my practice. So now, I'm a different lawyer than I was before. I do a lot more personal injury and criminal defense work, but I still do a fair amount of real estate. I continue to do criminal stuff because it allows me to speak to young people, allows to talk to me to people that look like me. I think a segment of society that I think needs my help. So I will always do the criminal law and try to make a difference in that regards. but that's what I do, man. I love what I do. I love being an attorney. Some days I hate running a business, but
Well,
I love being a lawyer.
it's I feel your pain, man. It's funny because I work with a lot of financial professionals, and what's interesting is they all have similar story. If they've been in the business long enough, they have similar stories about the moment where their career path turned into kind of a life of service. I can't really think of a better way to explain that, but in their world, the first time they delivered a death claim check to a client's spouse, right? A lot of times that's the story I hear where they're like, I took the exams and I was qualified and I was doing the work, but it didn't really, the impact of what I was doing didn't hit me until this happened.
Mm.
Is that relatable to you? Is there anything or a moment or a situation, a year, a time, either as an entrepreneur or a man looking to serve his community, whether it's the Black community or the greater Hartford community at large? Was there a moment for you where the flip got switched, so to speak?
So I think the the the
The switch,
switch
sorry,
really
the
got
switch
flipped.
got flipped. The flip didn't get
Switch got
switched.
flipped.
So,
Yes, the
yeah.
switch got flipped.
Yes.
I think the switch really got flipped. The first time I was really stopped and searched at a really young age by police officers, right? So, um, you know, having a gun drawn on you at a very young age, before the age of 12, um, when you're doing kid stuff, is a very impactful moment, and that's always kind of stuck with me. At one point in life, I thought I was gonna be a doctor. To be totally honest with you, got to college, realized I hated blood, and that was not really going to be a good career path. So I was blessed again, grace, fortune, where when you go to a small liberal arts college, you can still graduate in 4 years because there's not as many degree requirements. Whereas if you go to a state college, you got to take certain classes. They're only offered certain semesters, and you find yourself being in school for 4.5, 5 years. And the biggest problem for people of color in school, for the first and foremost, is the finance. And if you're going there longer than 4 years, then you've made it longer for yourself. But again, grace and good luck. So I was at Trinity. I had time to kind of figure out what I wanted to do next. And I decided I wanted a profession, and being a lawyer. So I decided to go to law school. And I kind of drew on some of those earlier things. I'm like, I kind of feel like I want to be involved in this area of law. And then when I got out and I was on my own, um, it was interesting to see how people would gravitate me to me just because what I look like, right? It was like, he gets it, right? He gets it. He's been through these things. He understands that I was in the car. I wasn't necessarily reaching for anything. I was stopped for no reason. He gets it.
Mm.
So it was a good it always felt good for me to come out and talk to kids, and that was more relatable because when you stand up in the courtroom, you got to say, "Good morning, Your Honor, Attorney Michael Chambers Jr." for the record. It's still one of my favorite things to do, to just stand up in court and say, put my father's name on the record like that. And it's powerful, right? For these young men who are not really used to seeing people that look like them in that position,
Yes, sir.
right? So it's something that I've always, something I don't take for granted, and it's something that I always try to talk to people and relate to people, because especially with the internet now, like, these kids are their age and they see these people with all kinds of success,
Mm.
and they don't know how to get from point A to point B because no one around them really does it, right? They either see people that look like us, because especially in this part of the world, we're not in Atlanta or one of the major cities, but they don't really see a lot of professionals that look like them. Their
Mm.
teachers don't look like them. Their doctors don't look like them. Their lawyers don't look like them.
Mm.
So I'm kind of well, I used to be, because now I'm getting old, but I was a nice point of reference, right? To see someone that looked like them driving a nice car.
Yes, sir.
My music might be up a little bit. I might have a pair of designer sunglasses on, and they ask you, how'd you get there? And I can say, man, I did it this way.
Mm.
And it's different from a lot of kind of changes their perception or their equation of how do I get to from point A to point B of success, rather than I don't have to dribble a basketball, I don't have to be in the movies. You know what I mean? I don't have to move product. Um, so it's that's kind of one of the main reasons why I do what I do, and I still try to get out into the courtroom as much as possible because it's still important, man.
Is that it's interesting you bring this up, man, because I've had a lot of conversations lately just about you know you know my personal career path, etc. And it's interesting the things you start to care about the older you get, right? And it's like you start to realize what your parents meant this whole
Yes.
time. Like we've always known the poem bridge builders, but I haven't my entire life I haven't been put in a position to necessarily build a bridge for someone behind me. And I think as we get older and I move into sort of that phase in my life and my career, they're starting to get sort of intertwined a little bit and starting to
100%.
intersect, and the things I care about are I can express those now through work, right? And the more leverage, the more leadership I have, etc. So does that drive you still? I know the way you were just talking about sort of giving back and letting people see someone that looks like them in a nice car or as an attorney. How much do you really think about that? I don't know if I'm asking it the right
Every
way,
day.
but does that
No, no,
does
I
that
understand.
motivate you and drive you?
100%,
Yeah,
100%, 100%. Again, I realize that I am blessed, bro. There's no other way
no
to look.
doubt.
I am blessed, and it wasn't just talent and hard work. Don't get me wrong. I
Yep.
had to work really hard, and I am talented. But there were certain moments in my life that I got through and I got past that it wasn't just on me, right? I had, for example, at the time when I'm taking the bar exam, my ex-girlfriend who passed away, like she wasn't smart enough to necessarily take that bar exam, but that was someone in my corner that supported me, right?
Mm,
So I had people around me that understood how important education was. I had friends where I would go out and they might be in the car and they might have a little marijuana, medication on them, and they would say, "Hey," they thought enough of me and what they knew I was about to say, "Hey, we've got this on us. You
yep.
might want to take your own car because we don't want to put you in that position,"
Mm,
right? So it really, man, it just you never know what kind of beacon or light you could be for someone, and then there's other people around you who can help and build. Man, I don't even know where I'm going with that, but just help build and take you in the right direction. If they see something positive about you,
mm,
um, people will notice that, man, and they can help push you and you can help push each other. And I guess to pivot back to what I'm saying, the internal drive. I mean, I had some, I had a case today where a young man was accused of being in possession of a firearm, and I felt bad for him because it's a situation where he didn't need to be in it. And when you sat down, you talked to it, it's a really sensible young man, right? He's super
mm,
smart, very sensible. So you wonder, man, how did he get to that spot,
mm.
right? What made you decide that you need to walk around with an unregistered firearm on that particular day? So, I'm trying to, one file at a time, talk to individuals, one file at a time, make differences in people's lives. I try to be philanthropical, if I said it right.
Yeah.
Um,
I
um,
heard
I,
tropical, but I think you were talking about philanthropy.
Philanthropical
Yes,
something. I
philanthropy.
believe more in alms than donations, i.e., um, if someone's got something going on or teachers or students are short, people approach me and I'll write a check or give some cash, and I'd rather do it that way, right? Like
Yes.
just I try to um make differences. It doesn't always have to be a big splashy difference. But people know, right?
Mm.
And as I said, alms are done in private out of the goodness of your heart. Sometimes I write the donations, which is okay too. But I'm trying to make differences but at the same time, I don't want people to think that I'm doing it for, oh, it's sponsored by the law office of Michael L. Chambers Jr., or I'm handing a check to someone on my Instagram at M Chambers Law, by the way, on my Instagram account for publicity. It's a nice side effect sometimes, but um, sometimes people need help and they don't want to ask for help because they don't want to be part of that photo op, right?
But I think too, man, like you can have both, right? Like we live in a capitalistic society. You're an entrepreneur. Like I would look at it as if your business can't thrive, then it can't serve, right? So if you can't grow and if you can't earn, if you can't be profitable, then you're not any good to anyone that you're trying to help, right? So I don't think there's, and I'm not saying I don't think this is where you're going. Like there shouldn't be any shame in saying I want to both support the community, but I need to make some money at the same time too. Like I want to get back, but I need you to also support me, and I'm advertising for myself. And there ain't no shame in my game about it, So
yes. That, like, for example, the other day somebody said to me, "Well, Attorney Chambers, you gave X amount of dollars and you're sponsoring the Connecticut Latino Fest." And I'm like, yes. I was like, well, last year, 63% of my clients were Latino. So if you spend money with me, it's only right that I'm going to support events in your community, not just for my brand, but I got to give back to not all communities, but I need to be intentional with, I know that last year was whatever kind of year for me, or it was a slower year with Corona, but this segment of the population spent a gang of money with me. So yes, if I cut back on some advertising, but it wasn't going to be that. Shout out to Victor Luna and Luna Productions as I'm doing all my but it's so I 100% agree with that statement as well. 100%.
Yeah, and look, I think, after the summer of social justice and corporations putting out blanket statements about their commitment, many of them not really even following it up with any real action. I think, I look at a business owner like yourself who is part of the fabric of the community that literally serves people in need, some of which, many of which look like you and people that can look up to you. And I'm proud of you as a friend, man. And I just wanted to make sure I communicated that and everyone else knew that about you as well, too. So
I appreciate that.
Give yourself a plug real quick. So when I go, I'll make sure I got your social handles and everything, but I'm going to pivot to your family. So before we get off of your business, why would people call you? When should they call you? What type of law are you really, really have your arms around right now?
So I tell people I solve problems, right? If I can't particularly solve your problem, I'll find someone who will. But specifically, I do a lot of personal injury. If you're injured driving, you slip and fall, I do those type of cases. I do a lot of criminal defense work. I used to do more traffic and DUI stuff as well. I'm kind of tapering that down. A really good brother that I think you should talk to by the name of Donald Howard. He's actually one of your frat brothers. I've been working a lot with Don. I've been doing work with Don and kind of handing that stuff off more to Don. But I do some traffic stuff, but more, I guess more of the hardcore stuff. I do a lot of, firearms, sale charges, everything from sexual assaults, murders. I kind of run the gambit that part in the criminal side. And then the real estate side, I tell people it's actually my favorite part of the practice because typically both sides walk away happy, right? If you're doing a refinance, you're happy you're saving some money, you're getting some cash. If you're selling a house, you're moving on to a new dream. If you're buying a house, a lot of people are moving to their dream homes. So I do a lot of real estate as well. So that's really my main areas of practice.
Oh, love it. So before we wrap, man, I want to talk a little bit about the beautiful bundle of joy you have in your home and how your family has expanded. And I've watched you grow as a human and as a father, and how proud you are of, always posting videos. Man, I love it. So talk a little bit about what, being a father has meant to you, to your career. Has it changed and altered your perspective? And I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but I know you can handle it. So I'm doing this because just grab whatever you hear that you want to roll with and think back to your upbringing, your parents, and talk a little bit about maybe how their input on your life is affecting the way you parent as well right now too. So talk a little bit about the perspective you've gained or maybe lost. I don't know.
It
and having a beautiful baby
was,
girl in the house.
Man, I can tell a whole bunch. First of all, I tell people my daughter saved my soul, right?
Mm.
So your child is your opportunity. It's if you have one opportunity in life, your child is your opportunity to be the best version of yourself. And I really feel like right now I'm living the best version of my life. First of all, um, none of this right now, the expansion of my business, the rebranding, the shift in my practice, none of that is possible for me to do without the love and support of my wife, right? If I'm in the office until 8:30 at night, I know that when I come home, the baby's good, she's down sleeping, I probably have a hot meal, the laundry's done, and that's with a wife that's working a full-time job from home, right? So um, I can't do any of that um, without the support of my family, my wife and my daughter. Um, in marriage, you typically in life you become one parent and you marry the other, right? So I've 100% become my father without a doubt. Like I am the walking, talking epitome of my dad, and I've married a wonderful woman who's a lot like my mother. Now, because I'm super critical, I have tried to be a better version of my dad. Dad, I love you, the best dad in the world. But I've tried to be a better version of my dad. What does that mean? Well, that means I might actually cook every once in a while. Um, I might do some mopping on Saturday, a little vacuuming. Because my dad was of an era where he was old school Jamaican West Indian. Wife came home, she did all the cooking, she did all the cleaning, she did all that. So although my wife is listen, you come into my sometimes like people, I'm like, welcome to my museum because my house is meticulous because that's who my wife is, and it's wonderful. But I've tried to be a little bit better, softer version of my dad. Now, a
Be
lot of that,
careful.
as I said, my early perception, my dad's nickname was Big Mike. He was this big, huge guy, and I was scared of him, right? So I don't know, but when people tell me my dad used to hug and love me and tell me he loved me all the time when I was small. But as a boy, West Indian cultures, you're supposed to toughen them up and harden them up. Um, so I don't know. So I don't know if that'll shift in me as a dad, but I'm the most hugging, loving, cuddly dad in the
Ah,
world. I cry. I've cried more in the last year and a half with my daughter than I have like
mhm.
ever, whether it be watching Frozen, or just
Don't admit
like this
that,
morning,
man. Come on.
It's it, man. This morning, my daughter came up to me and said, "Papi, buen trabajo. I'm so proud of you." And she hugged me. I was like, "What?"
I
Like
was gonna bring
20 year
this
old.
up, Mick. Yo, I'm extremely happy that you and Alex have taught her Spanish. I think that's cool. I can go into a lot of reasons why I believe that.
Absolutely.
But has that been difficult for you, and why was that so important for the two of you?
So it's literally I think for parents that are bilingual is one of the greatest gifts you can give your child, right? The ability to speak another language. For parents who only speak one language, I'm encouraging you guys turn Netflix on to another language and just let your child only they're going to use an iPad or something, let them only use that language.
Hmm.
Because it's such a big world, man. It's
Yeah.
such a big world, and we don't expose ourselves. And a young woman who hopefully will have her pedigree in education, right? Because you can't buy a pedigree. It's either you have it or you don't. So
Hmm.
hopefully we'll set her up and she'll go to the, great schools for all her life,
We
but
gotta
then
have another
continue.
conversation about education because, like, I feel like we could
Absolutely.
spend anyway. Go ahead.
That can be a whole topic. Let's do that
Yes.
definitely.
Yep.
Um, but to have the ability to speak Spanish fluently and effortlessly, if I could speak Spanish fluently right now, I would be worth my weight in gold. I would triple my net worth, not double, triple my net worth. Because when people have problems, they want to feel comfortable. And part
Yeah.
of that comfortable level is speaking in their native language. So and let's be honest, if my daughter is going to be a Latina woman and Jamaican woman, but if she's going to have the disadvantages of being a woman and being a Latina, which is underpaid, underestimated, taken for granted, then she should enjoy the advantages. Number one is I speak another language. So
Yes.
I have access to a client base or to a population base that you can't touch, Mr. Employer, or my business can serve a community effortlessly,
Yes.
right? Because I speak the language. So I've always thought that was really important. It's, I think it's, a lot of my in-laws speak Spanish predominantly, or exclusively, and she should be able to communicate with her family if we go visit Ecuador and talk with it without having a problem. And as I said, my Spanish, shout out to COVID, because I've sat in front of the television and watched a lot of shows in Spanish,
You got me
and my
thinking.
Spanish has gotten a lot better
I need to
since the
switch up
start
the
of
game.
COVID.
I need to
That's it,
switch
man.
up.
Just turn Netflix to Spanish. Put the subtitles in English, and when you're having little problems, you just kind of go back and forth.
I like it. So
Easy.
Mick, let's wrap with. I'm really curious to know, because I think about this from time to time. If you had an opportunity to speak to, let's call it the 16-year-old you.
Yes.
Let's go. Actually, let's go back even further than that. Let's talk. Let's call it the 12-year-old, the preteen you. What is one piece of advice you would give that young man about what was coming for him down the track?
Man, I would give him the same advice that I was given, which is you've got to be better, right? You've got to always work a little harder. You've got to always work a little smarter. You've always got to dress a little crisper. You've got to be better, right? That's it's the standard. Um, Always be better. Always hold yourself better. Not just because that what society is going to force you to do, but you want that to be your inner working, right? Just strive to be better. You can just show up and be average, right? You can just show up. Always try to be better. Differentiate yourself from the group. And if you might not be the smartest person in the room, but just by the way you carry yourself, just by the way you treat people, just by the way you not only speak, but the way you listen to people. Um, try to always be better and carry yourself um, in that regard, right? If you can walk with crowds and keep your virtue,
Yeah,
um, just to drop I'm sure that touchdown and a couple of our Greek friends out there.
absolutely.
Um,
I was actually
so you know,
visualizing myself anyway. I was you actually took me to a place where I was seeing myself in a room, and I won't go into detail about what I was seeing in that moment, but you took me back there. So
well, listen, one day we will have a great conversation. Are great men created or are they born? Which I would love to have that conversation with you.
I would love. I
Um,
think about it all the time, man. Like I just I think about my experience pledging. Like
yeah,
I
there it
mean
is.
it changed the trajectory of the way I thought, my drive, what I thought I was capable of. How many hours of sleep I thought I needed. Right, everything. It changed
100%.
everything.
Get
Anyway,
this done in 2 hours. It's impossible.
yeah,
1 hour and 59 minutes.
yeah,
59 minutes. It's done, right?
yeah,
Like changes your whole thing. It is the greatest thing in my life that I would never do again.
Yo, Mick, on that note, man, we got so many other things we need to talk about. Maybe it's an opportunity for us to segue into other conversations,
100%.
other platforms, other things.
Yeah, man.
Maybe we'll ask the people what they want to hear about from us if they want to hear from us again. But I've enjoyed this tremendously. I know we have an opportunity to talk as friends constantly, and I'm glad we allowed the people to get into your mind a little bit, to hear about your business, your life, and the human side of the attorney, Michael L. Chambers Jr. So thank you very much, sir. We appreciate
Mike,
you.
thank you so much for letting me be a part of this. As I said, I've been dying to find a way to sneak onto your platform. I'd love to do this again. I'd love
Yes.
to, do it light topics, keep it we're kind of deep, let people know into who our hearts and worlds are, but I'd love to do this again. Thank you so much for having me, Mike.
My
Really
guy,
appreciate
my
it.
guy.
Yo,
All
there.
right, Mick. So I love that, and everyone. I'm gonna just say thank you for joining us, and I enjoyed the conversation, although he and I get to talk a lot. But my takeaways are obviously education being critical, and in this day and age, there are so many resources with technology, as Mick was saying, that you need to go out and explore, expand your horizons. It's a great big world. Put Netflix, the subtitles on, learn a different language. It's also very important that at some point in your career, you figure out a way to give back and be a bridge builder. And Mr. Chambers talked about that in large degree. And then having a network of friends and people that support your ambitions and your drive that aren't detracting from your life. And from my perspective, I can think of more of a whole grown up, right? A holistic mindset, taking care of his community, also taking care of his business, being an entrepreneur, taking care of his family, and also, improving on the legacy that his parents had set. So thank you guys for joining us, and make sure you check out Mr. Chambers' website, and I'll put all the information down below. Thank you guys, and we'll see you soon.